Hey, sorry.
Hey,
Hey. No, really, we can actually edit this part out, Jeremy.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you saw it or not. I just kind of added
Yeah.
our names next to questions and stuff. So
I like inhaled to like start talking and realize that I forgot the question. So yeah. No
you guys
biggie.
remember Funds?
Welcome to the Dastardly Dingoes podcast, a show that celebrates all things nerdy. You'll get an insider's look into the world of comic books, graphic novels, TV and film, gaming and pop culture, as well as the technologies that drive all of it. Now, are you ready to get nerdy?
welcome to the Dastardly Dingoes podcast, the show about all things nerdy. We discuss nerd news, movies, TV shows, games, comics, and so much more. It's the show you don't know if we have pants on or not. I'm Brian.
Hey, I'm Jeremy.
And brace yourselves, because we're about to get nerdy. All right, folks, this is a wonderful episode, very special to me because I get to introduce a good friend of mine. So we're going to turn the clocks back to 2016, Golden Girls style. Picture it, Somerset, Kentucky, midsummer. It's my first Comic-Con. No one has walked through the doors in at least a couple hours because that's how that show went. And so I'm just wandering around the show, and I came across a guy who was slaving away at his table. And he looks up, and we start chatting. And boom, I make my first Comic-Con friend. And ever since then, our guest has pumped out books and prints. He has ran a successful Kickstarter campaign and is now creating an animated series based on his manga series, Aurora. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I present to you the one and only Ray Coffman. Welcome, Ray.
Hey, welcome. Hey, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's a very warm welcome. I appreciate that. And that show, yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was rough, and it sucked because it was our first show, and like we had ever done. That wasn't your first show, right? You'd done it before.
No, I've been doing shows for a number of years at that point. But yeah, I did it as a favor to the guy who was running the show. I designed the logo and everything for him. He didn't know what to expect, really. I was there because Shang Tsung was going to be there. I was like, I want to go meet him.
Nice.
And then he fell out at the last minute. I was like, oh, he's not here.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a rough show, but I got to meet you, and we got to meet another cool friend. Oh dear, another cool friend there as well. Good things came from it for sure. So Ray, how you doing, man? Doing good?
I am great. I am just in the studio right now, editing final timing stuff for the Aurora trailer that we're going to launch on September 30th, and I got some YouTube video stuff I'm doing, so it's always crazy busy down here. But yeah, just rolling. I mean, I'd rather be crazy busy than sitting in front of the TV binging Netflix with nothing but my underwear on and nothing to do. So
I feel attacked now. Thanks for that.
Well,
no, man, for sure. I completely agree with
I'm
you.
live looking at me after 1 a.m.
Just to get us started before we dive into you, Ray. Before we get to know you a little bit better, we have a little segment called "Get to Know Your Dingoes" because now you are, whether you like it or not, an honorary dingo. You now have the ability and permission to be on the show whenever you want to. All you have to do is just say, "Hey guys, have me on," and you're there, buddy.
Yep.
Dingo, you have me on.
Exactly. You must now speak an Australian accent for the rest of the episode.
Drink a coffee when I get out of here.
So the first couple questions that we ask everybody is the first one is, what kind of nerd are you?
I am a gaming and anime nerd, but with a background in all things nerdy.
Okay.
I originally, when I was a kid, it was Ghostbusters and Gremlins, of course, and things like that. And as I got a little bit older, preteens, it was X-Men and X-Force and DC and all that kind of stuff. But all those years leading up to that, I had been chasing this dragon of this movie I watched when I was a kid called Vampire Hunter D. But I didn't know what it was called when I was like 8 years old. My dad brought this bad dub home from the mom pop pick-a-flick in Harrodsburg. And my dad's like, oh, monsters and stuff. My son likes that. It was called like Monster Hunter or something like that. It had a bad case on it. And so all those years, I had no idea that Yoshitaka Amano was my artistic idol. And I had no idea. I was chasing this look. And I didn't know until I was in college. And then Sci-Fi was showing it one night. I was like, oh, my God, it's Monster Hunter. Wait, it's called Vampire Hunter D? I was the wrong thing.
That's funny.
So for years, and then I got introduced to, of course, Final Fantasy and all these shonen manga and things like that. Stories about growth and overcoming and persevering and things like that I really dig. But yeah, so anime gaming nerd. It's pretty much where my comfort zone is, where my zen is.
All right. That's great.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. I still haven't actually watched all of Vampire Hunter D. I've seen clips. I've seen an episode here or there. Your enthusiasm alone over the years has actually made me want to just sit down and binge the thing.
The 85 movie is my favorite movie of all time, and only because it's got a special place with me. Now that the animation's dated, the voice acting's dated, but it's like, think of any 70s grindhouse movie that people like, or like some nasty horror movie they like. It's just terrible.
Yeah.
Like the old Christopher Lee Dracula movies aren't great, but people love them. That's kind of like me with Vampire Hunter D. You know what I mean?
All right. Yeah. That makes sense.
It's Clint Eastwood, basically. It's Fistful of Dollars, man with no name. And these stories are great because they're never about him. They're about the people in the conflict. He's the force of nature that comes into town, So I'll leave you with that. I won't get into it. I could talk 2 hours about that movie.
All right, cool. Well, you gave me a little taste, and you've been giving it to me for the last few years, so I think I'm just going to binge it here pretty soon.
If somebody cut in right there, and we're like, what are they talking about?
You give me a little taste,
Give it to me for the last 2 years. It was a special afternoon in Somerset in 2016.
Indeed.
All right.
I was only 16. I didn't know what love was.
Things got weird.
I knew what jail was, and I didn't go around him.
Oh, man. All right. Well, so the next question that we ask everybody that we have on the show now is, what are your top 5 movies of all time? And you can include like anime and all genres. Okay.
I'm going to say number 1 is Vampire Hunter D.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2 is the Lord of the Rings trilogy, because I'm boxing all that together.
Yes. Yes, as you should.
Yeah.
I say the same thing, and everybody's always like, you can't have all 3. Like they were filmed at the same time, and they're all one story. You can absolutely say this. They're one movie.
Absolutely. And 3 through 5 varies sometimes, but I'm going to go with the original Star Wars trilogy. Luke Skywalker, the Skywalker story. See, number 4, what's it going to be this week? Or number 3? 4, yeah, we're on 4. You know what? 7 Samurai, the original Kurosawa flick. And then, because without that, there really is no Star Wars,
That's true.
So, number 5 varies and bounces. Oh, Red Cliff. It's a period War of the Three Kingdoms period of China. It's a fun, real like John Woo masterpiece. It's a fantastic movie. But it's another epic. I've got a lot of epics in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you know what, man? I do too, actually. I love epics. I'm drawn to those. I feel like that type of story, because it's like it's like life, really. You show up and you're caught up in this big thing that's bigger than you, and you just have to figure it out along the way. And you follow these characters who are all doing the same thing. And I think that's an excellent just kind of reflection of how we live life and all of that. I think epics are close to our hearts in that way.
And Asian cinema really has this way of the way they put their cinematography on screen, the way it just looks, as an artist and as a creator and as a fantasy creator as well, it really speaks to my heart when I see like these sweeping, shots, these 4K sweeping shots of like harvest grain fields and desaturated, venues, and then like this bright red sash blowing off of somebody, I love that stuff. I'm a geek for that stuff, man.
Yeah.
To quote The Crow, it's the walking against the wind stuff right there. That's yeah.
I have a couple of friends that are creators, and I'll put out a piece of artwork or something like that. Like, man, it sure is windy in Aurora. I'm like, it is.
all the time.
Yeah, that wind
tornado watches constantly.
It is kicking. Well, I get that from, I grew up in Mercer County, and it seems like all the time in the fall when you're getting ready for school and those times that you remember, it's always windy. There's always a tornado warning or something. And I can remember growing up, and seemed like it was always windy in Harrodsburg. You know what I mean?
All right. Well, so to just continue the getting to know Ray Coffman here, Jeremy, you want to jump in and get us started on the follow-up segment of getting to know your dingoes?
First question we've got for you is, how did you get into comic books?
I was always a fan of them when I was a kid, and when I was in college, I was writing. Aurora is kind of my Lord of the Rings. I was writing it like I didn't really understand pacing and stuff at the time. And then I had some friends that knew I could draw, and they were like, well, you should draw this as like a comic or a graphic novel. And I was like, I don't know if I'd be good at that. And so just over years and years of really hammering it out and trying to figure it out and everything, I met a lot of people along my journey that kind of helped and threw in on it and kind of showed me where I needed to go and what path to walk. So that's kind of how I got into it. I was never the guy who wanted to draw or write for Marvel or DC or anything like that. I never wanted to submit stuff. I just wanted to put my stories out there.
Yeah.
In whichever was the most easily accessible way to do that. Mm-hmm. Because I didn't want to feel like I was in a grind to get somebody to see my work. I just wanted to put it out there and whoever enjoyed it could enjoy it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to get caught up in that. I saw a lot of people get caught up in that grind, and it killed their passion to do it. And I didn't want to do that. Yeah. So that's just, in a nutshell, that's kind of how I got started.
Cool.
Yeah, I actually, being a comic creator myself, man, I completely understand that. I've seen so many guys that and ladies, any creator really, that it's so easy to get caught up in like chasing after that publisher. And get chasing after that big break, and then pretty soon you're not having fun anymore. You've forgotten the love of creating, and not that there's anything wrong with success and having goals. Absolutely nothing wrong with that, right? But there is a point where you've got to realize, okay, why am I doing this? And am I doing this now just to get noticed? Am I doing this now just to get picked up, or am I doing it because I love it?
Yeah, and a lot of that is, the success, that's part of the journey. That's not the goal. You know what I mean? Yeah, the goal for me personally, it changes for everybody, and it should change for everybody. We're not all the same. But for me, the goal is to create something that gives back to people in some way. Like I can remember like having a dead-end job in 2003, 2004 in a crappy studio apartment in Lexington. And Friday mornings I would get off. I'd work Sunday night through Thursday night, third shift at Walmart, supervising and trolling around. And then I would look forward to getting it online and whatever I could buy and download digitally at the time to read or read any kind of new comics or manga. I looked forward to that. That got me through the week because Friday was the morning I would do that before I'd go to bed. You know what I mean? So I wanted to be the guy who gave people something to look forward to. And any kind of success or anything like that along the way, that's just part of the journey. That's a great part of the journey because we all want to do this for a living, Right. But your goal should be to tell your story visually or through words or both. That's my take on it.
Yeah, and I would even say that I think people that have that mindset are the ones who stick around for a long time. And really in the indie circle, that's really in any circle. That's how you get noticed. That's how you become successful. Is you don't just make a book you don't have the Ninja Turtle syndrome, right? Where it's like, you make one issue and it takes off. That never happens. Like you got to stick around. You got to do it because you love it, and eventually, people will just start buying your stuff because you've been there for 20 years. You know what I mean? It's like, this guy's just not going away. I might as well see what he has to offer.
You got like a whole catalog of stuff. It's like, oh, you got all this stuff. I just discovered this guy. Let me go back and check it out.
Right. Yeah, so, and I think there's a saying that my wife has said, and I regurgitate it now, is we're not creating for the people right now necessarily, even though we are technically, we're also creating for the people 10 years from now. Sure. That's a part of it too, maybe even more so, really.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta give something, put something out there, put a piece of yourself out there with your stories. If your passion is storytelling, if your passion is creating something good, then the rest of it eventually will take care of itself, I feel like.
Yeah. So how did you get into, getting into comics, you kind of explored that a little bit. How did that translate into getting into animation?
Well, it's funny because if you talk to any number of people, they'd probably all say the same thing. Like, whenever I'd be explaining, so I have a circle of creative people that I trust their opinion. You're a part of that circle, and there's other people who are part of that circle. I used to run ideas for pages for what I was working on by people like, well, this shot, he's doing this, or this shot, the camera's like panning and she's right here. And they're like, what are you talking about? I've always seen things in motion. Mm-hmm. So basically, when I make a comic book, I didn't realize that I was really making a storyboard for the animated thing that's in my head, because it all kind of serves the same thing. It's all part of the family of things. Like, comic books and animation are like cousins. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I got this wild bug a couple of years ago to learn animation, to just learn it. I was like, look, anything I want to learn, I can go online and learn it, because I've always been blessed with the ability to just learn stuff. I can absorb knowledge like a sponge. Like, and that around the house, I mean, I can learn to fix things. I can learn to fix plumbing. I can learn to fix stuff around the house if I need to, which is this house we bought. It's a good thing.
Got a little money pit, do you?
Yeah. But so I started teaching myself animation. I was like, I want to do this. But here's the thing. At the time, I was approaching 40, had a kid on the way, had a wife, and, there's those things where you can't just pick up and go to Savannah, So I was like, if I'm going to do this, I have to do this now, and I can do it. So I taught myself animation. I started testing things and testing timing and all this other kind of stuff, but also knowing that I didn't want to just put out like a cool looking piece of animation for people to see. So when I put animation online, I put unfinished sketches of frames online. I don't put finished pieces online because I want people to see the process and the journey. So when I got into it, not only did I want to get that down, but I wanted to also know how to network. So my goal wasn't to just make a cool little 5-minute animation, put it online, and there's my stamp. I wanted to do a full episode leading into a full season. I wanted to do it the right way with what I felt like were top professionals and getting advice from them along the way and picking their brains, because I had to go about this in a very unorthodox manner, right?
Yeah.
So that's basically what I spent the last 3.5 years doing is, working on the Aurora comic and working on other pieces of art and things in the meantime, and also making sure I talk to the right people professionally that would talk to me. You know what I mean? Because you inevitably run into things where people don't have time, or some people just don't want to talk to you, and I get that. That's fine, But those that would talk to me, I picked their brains for knowledge, and I just kind of reapplied that to everything I did, and now we're just kind of where we're at. So the comics was me bleeding out that need to tell this story, and the animation is getting it to where I've always seen it in my head, but for things that I couldn't do at the time, this was how I had to do it. Not to say that comics are second place, because they're not. It's all storytelling. It's all in the same family. But my end goal was to get it to where I could put it online and people could visually just watch it, basically.
Yeah. That's actually a similar situation for me as far as getting into videography and things like that. I just knew like I want to do this and got on YouTube, and 1,000 videos later, I feel like I'm better off than I was to start, so I thought, yeah, I like that journey. I respect people who take that approach where it's like, I don't have time to go back to school or, this or that. Like I have this thing in my head and I'm not going to be able to sleep until I figure it out. So,
right. And I think all of us kind of come from a generation, or at least close to the same generation, where, there was a time where you couldn't just pull the collected knowledge of all of human existence out of your pocket and look up something.
yeah.
So now I'm kind of like, I've always been a hard worker. I was raised to be a hard worker. And I was raised, if you want something hard, bad enough, you can learn how to do it. Well, now I can learn how to do anything, and it's right there in my pocket. There's absolutely no excuse why I can't do whatever I want and anybody else, because you've got the golden ticket right there in your pocket.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's more for, I use it mainly. It's a meme box most of the time, but it's why I store all my great memes. But every now and then I can go on there and look up any kind of information I want. And if you know how and where to look for it, you can find whatever you want.
Yeah.
I see people's shows all the time that kind of tell me what you're telling me now. They follow me online on YouTube and stuff like that. They're like, how can I learn to do this? I'm like, we found me on YouTube. That's where you learn how to do it.
Yeah.
Or any site like that. You know what I mean? You just have to, a lot of times I think people ask you how they can get into doing it, how they can teach themselves to doing something. And what they're really trying to say is, how did you make yourself sit down and finish it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I think that's the real question people want to ask. And the answer is, you just have to do it. There's so many nights where I just want to play a game or watch something, and I just can't.
Yeah, and there is a bit of a romanticized, stereotype, I guess, of being a creator, being an artist, and it's like, oh, how, where do you get your ideas and all this? And it's like, well, honestly, like half the time, and I think we can all agree, half the time this just feels like work too. I mean, it's work that we have fun doing. Don't get me wrong. Like, I would not want to be doing anything else but this.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, it sometimes, man, it just feels like a job, and you would much rather be binging Netflix. But instead, you got to put your butt in the chair and you got to get to work. And I think a lot of people, just because they've probably not done it before, they don't think about that kind of stuff. I know when I was first starting out, I had heard people say that, but I didn't really believe it until I got in the swing of things. And, a year, 6 months, a year into it, I was like, oh gosh, like there really are days where you just don't want to do it, but you have to,
Like I do the YouTube thing, and I've got a lot of people who are really cool and follow me on there, and I've become friends with some of those people, and I'll get DMs from them from Twitter and Facebook and stuff. And they'll be like, hey, man, you haven't put anything up in 2 weeks. I'm like, because I'm working on this animation. I'm in here for 10 to 12 hours a day working on this. I can't do that other stuff. So, but it's work. It's a lot of work. But seeing what you've been working on finished, like Brian, when you post your pages, and they're finished, they're gorgeous. But it takes hours to get them. It takes hours and hours to get them there.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Anything you're working on, if it's worthwhile, you see that finished product, you kind of go, that. There it is, and you enjoy it for a few seconds, and then you have to get right back to it.
And then you got to get back to it. Yeah, it's the same thing, or it's exactly right. When we so far, we're about to send issue 6 of Memoirs to the printer, and I always have that moment. I'll take it out of the box, I'll inspect it to make sure it looks good. And our printer's great, so I really don't have to worry about that too much anymore. Yeah. And I'll hold it for just a second. I'll flip through it, and I'll be like, man, there it is. Just, months worth of work right here.
Yeah.
and it's a great feeling. And then you're absolutely right. And then you got to put it down and you got to go back to work. And it's like, all right, let's start over essentially with the next one.
Yeah.
Or not necessarily even just going back and drawing more, but I've got a comic book. Well, now I have to become a marketer, and I have to figure out how to get people to buy that book.
Yeah.
A lot of times when people ask how did you or how do you get into something, Ray, you mentioned that people come up to you how can I start doing this? If it's going to take them more than 10 hours total to become a master at it, they're just not going to ever follow through with it. You know what I mean? 99% of the time people are just going to be
I do know
they'll watch a couple videos and then I give up.
I have put, I can't even tell you how many hours I put into the comics and stuff, but just learning the animation stuff and doing that my own and the animation work that I've produced so far, I mean, it's got to be close to over 1,000 hours. I mean, it's like something crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know what the math would be on that. But, and you mentioned the marketing stuff. That's super important because a lot of people that, if you think about it, it's a double-edged sword, the age we live in. It's one of the best times to be a creator, but it's also one of the hardest times to be a creator because anybody with a phone and a social media account is putting their stuff out there.
Yeah.
We've never lived in an age like that before. And it floods the marketplace with so much talent.
Yeah.
I tell my wife all the time, it looks like there's more talent than ever there has been before. But really what it is more talent has access to more eyes than ever before.
Yeah.
So I think the level of talent, percentage-wise, among the people of the earth is probably still the same.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody has the ability to put that out there now. And what you have to do is you have to learn how to set yourself apart. You have to learn how to not only sell your product and sell yourself, but who to put it in front of. Because if I go to an X-Men convention, they're not buying Aurora, probably.
Yeah. Right.
You know what I mean? You have to know who to market your stuff to. That's part of it. And I'm fortunate in the respect that I've been media director for 2 different companies. So
there you go.
I took all that knowledge into account when creating not only my business plan for every 6-month period, because most people go quarterly, I go 6-month period because, as you know, as an independent creator, things move a little bit slower for us.
Yeah.
So you have to learn the business side of it, because if you don't, you're either going to make it and somebody's going to screw you over, or you're not going to make it. And I hate telling people that because making it is different things to different people. Yeah. But a lot of times people making it is doing this for a living. If you want to do this for a living, you have to learn the business of it.
Yeah.
So, but it's good that you mentioned the marketing because people ask me about the marketing stuff all the time. I'm like, learn graphic design and learn some business stuff. That way you don't have to pay anybody to do any of your stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am very thankful that I have a super business savvy, marketing savvy wife.
Yeah,
and she has saved my butt, man. I tell you, I've said it time and time again, and I absolutely mean it. I dreamed up memoirs for about 15 years. Mm-hmm. Until she came along, and there's a reason I didn't do it before I got married to her. Is she just one day I just kept talking about it. One day she's like, "Shut up and do it," or stop talking about it altogether. And she helped me get it going. She's helped me every step of the way, and we've become business partners because of that. But I honestly, marketing I've learned a lot. I've learned a ton from, as we've gone over the last 5 years. But I've also learned a ton from her. So I can start taking some of those reins now. But you're absolutely right. That is a whole new beast. And if you're going to be a creator, you better do your research on how to do that stuff. If you don't have somebody, that you can afford to hire, or you can, that's willing to help you out.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
And he's absolutely right. If you ever see Brian at a show, if his wife's not at the table, she's walking around looking at other people's stuff or something. I've passed by you at several shows. Where's your manager?
Yeah. And it's so accurate, dude.
Yeah.
I always tell people
table, and I'll be like, "Hey, where's your client?" And he's like, "Oh, he's at the table."
Yeah, I always tell people I draw pretty pictures. She does the rest.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, oh man. So what? Staying with the animation process, kind of walk us through the process a little bit, Ray. What? So from the from I guess taking the comic and then turning it into an end result animated shot. What does that look like?
Okay, so basically what I have to do, my process is like when I created Aurora for the page, there were a lot of different concepts and stuff I was playing with at the time. Those concepts are still potent in the animation, but my mind has changed on how I want some things to be presented. So basically, when I was writing the script, it starts with a good script. You have to have a good script, as you know, even in comics. Starts with a script, concepts. What concepts do I want to put in there? What characters do I need to put in there? And the whole time I'm doing this, I'm my brain, the way I work is I'm cognizant of how do I want them to sound? Okay, now who do I have to look for to play this character? And how they sound and how they react and stuff, it affects your shot selection. Right. Unlike in a comic book, in animation, like how a character acts and carries themselves, like this shot, does it pan here, does it not pan here? So then you get in from your script to your storyboard. Once you got your characters down, you got your script down, you start working on your storyboards. I can't tell you how many nights I have just had storyboards up on my computer and just threw them all in the trash can. Sometimes everything's leading up to a moment, and then you storyboard that too. Because I put 6 frames on my page when I'm storyboarding, because I like to get as much detail in as I can. You work up to that last 3 pages of a scene in a storyboard, and it doesn't work. So I've gotten better at that, anticipating where things are going. But so I go from nail down the characters and the concepts to the script to the storyboards. And then I like to get in there and play around in animation programs with like movement, like how they're moving, my cameras, how's everything set up? Okay, so what's the camera gonna move in this shot, and what am I animating in this shot? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and I've seen some bad animation. Like I've seen, now, granted, I'm going to produce some bad animation. I know this because I'm going to think it looks good, and everybody else will be like, no, that was crap. You know what I mean? I understand this, and I'm ready for it. But I've seen some animation where they tried to use the camera rigging to animate the character moving around. That's something I had to be careful with to not do. But the process for me is all about what serves the feeling of the scene, shot selection, angles, facial expressions. All the voice actors I'm working with right now, I'm letting them create the character like traditional animation. And then I am animating their facial features and stuff around what I hear in their performance, basically.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So it's not like dubbing or anything like that. And it's funny, like some of the voice actors I'm talking to right now, I tell them that, and they go, I'm in. So, but that's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, because for them, then that they themselves feel like they're a part of the creative process outside of just adding the voice to the character.
And that's exactly what I tell them. That's my goal with Aurora, is to create a project and a place that everybody involved with it feels like they had a hand in creating this story.
Yeah.
And that's, whenever you've got everybody pushing towards a single vision on something, I think that's when you produce the best work.
Yeah.
But, and again, I'm a storyteller, so I'll ramble. I got a little bit off subject.
No, you're fine, man.
Oh, that's good.
But yeah, as far as the process goes, it's basically traditional stuff. You start with characters, concept, script, storyboard, and then storyboard to screen. And that's pretty much it. I spend a little more time tweaking fine details. Like I'll go in, I'll put a couple of in-betweens here and there, because a lot of some animation lingo, a lot of
in-betweens. What is that?
In between is like, okay, so you got your keyframes. Like if I'm here and then I'm here, Well, I've got to get from here to here. So when you're creating your keyframes and you're drawing your keyframes, it's the main motions. Like they got to get from here to here to here. Especially in fights, keyframes are so important. I'll go in and throw 3 in-betweens in between 2 keyframes just because I want it to be really fluid. You know? Now, there's animating on 1s, 2s, and 3s. Animating on 1s is like a drawing every frame, which I'm one guy, can't do it, not happening. Like your high-end Disney stuff from like the 90s and all that, that was
you got Studio Ghibli that like their workers are living there, and that's what that's what it takes. That's
all animated on 1s. Now the stuff you'll see on Cartoon Network and like Toonami and stuff like that, like the Shonen series, and they come from Japan and all that. That's all on 2s and sometimes 3s, which means you've got a drawing every 2 frames or every 3 frames. Okay. And then some scenes you'll see just like the people just talking. That's shortcut stuff. That's not cheap. It's shortcut stuff because you get to a point where you're like, when you're planning a whole episode, you're planning every shot. So like there's going to be some spots where basically, if you're an athlete and you've been playing for 3 quarters, you got to take a breather at the start of the 4th quarter. That's them taking a breather at the start of the 4th quarter. You know what I mean? A lot of lips flapping. That's just called flapping. Yeah. So I animate on 2s. That's what I do. I animate on 2s. And if there's like just some far off like setup shots or whatever, I'll put it on 3s because it doesn't need all the detail. But I've had to pull myself back a little bit because I accidentally was animating on 1s, and I was like, I can't do this. This is too much work. Yeah. So I had to go back and reanimate the first 10 minutes of the show. It wasn't all on 1s, but where I had to go back and adjust some things to 2s and 3s. Everything felt kind of off. Yeah. So I had to go back and fix it, But, planning is such a big part, especially if you're just one person doing it. You sitting down with pen and paper and planning exactly your workflow, how everything's going to go, not just the animating part, not just the storyboards and the creating part, but the part where you're like, I have to go get lunch at this time. You really right. Your whole 10-hour period, because if you're going to do it, you can't put in under 10 hours a day, especially if it's just you. You can't do it. And, I've got goals beyond this right now. So 10 hours a day is the minimum. And I can only do that 4 or 5 days a week. I can't do it 7 days a week. I've got another job and all that kind of stuff. But planning is so crucial. It is like planning is crucial when you're doing a comic book, as you know. Yeah. Planning is triple crucial when you're animating because all of your files have to be like, I've got a file for every scene. And in each of those scene folders, there are 15 folders of the different shots in that scene. Yeah. And they all have to be organized. And then you get your time sheets or your timing sheets where, at 13.3 seconds, I've got Renzia starting this little tirade. It's got to go from there to here. And then at 13.3, that audio's got to kick in on point or the lips are off and it looks bad. I mean, every 10th of a second has to be accounted for. And when you're going through those timesheets, it can be a little maddening. That's why sometimes you'll see the 10 or 15 second shot of the mountains. Like you'll be watching shows, it's like, man, they really hung on that shot. I wonder what that's supposed to mean. What's the deeper meaning there? Yeah. The meaning is they were tired. Man, how do we put 15 seconds in here where I can miss my hand?
Oh man, yeah. I got to tell you, like I am. I do see memoirs as animation eventually one day, but that whole process that you just described just gave me indigestion, so I think it might be a little further down the road than
well, you're also thinking about like what you have to do currently to do your story. I mean, you can't think about 2 of those at the same time, Right. Like I've been trying to get this Kickstarter out the door and put together for like 3 years almost now, you know what I mean? And, at the same time, I was dealing with things, and then I started the process of doing this animation, and it was, if I could go back and punch 3 years younger me in the head, say, stop it, I probably would have done it,
Yeah. You were talking about the keyframes and things like that. Something interesting I heard watching people talk about how Into the Spider-Verse was made, which is just a beautiful movie. I loved it. They were talking about when they were showing Miles versus when they were showing Peter Parker. Peter Parker was on the ones, but Miles, when he first started, was on threes, and they wanted it to intentionally be like choppy because he's just like getting into a stride and learning how to do. So they wanted it to look awkward.
Right.
I thought that was really cool. I didn't notice it whenever I was watching it, but you go back and watch it and you're like, oh, it makes total sense. And it's a great way to add to the story that you're trying to tell. So yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. The fluid movement from Peter Parker and that, like, everything's so smooth with him, because he's been doing it for a long time. That's all animated on ones. Everything's a keyframe, basically. There is no in between. But yeah, and Miles Morales in that movie, his style is naturally quicker and more unpredictable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that from here to here, and Avatar: The Last Airbender would do that a whole lot too. Like with Aang, like everything looked natural and fluid, especially when he's doing his little the kung fu motions and stuff that his airbending is based on. And then you'd see like Katara or Zuko when they're struggling to do their stuff a little bit. That was all on 2s and 3s. They did the same thing in Avatar.
Yeah. Huh. That's cool. All right, Ray. So tell us, what are some of the biggest animation inspirations that you have?
Well, I'm going to say the 86 Transformers movie was a big one for me.
Oh, moment of silence. Good grief. That wrecked me as a child.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, when Starscream died, it killed me too. No,
oh, you jerk.
It's funny because, like, I remember, like, I had a real young dad. He was only 24, 25 when he took 5-year-old me to see that, or 6-year-old me to see that in theater. And I remember Dad getting upset when Prime died, because Prime was like John Wayne to him, right?
Yeah.
Because he was kind of a kid too,
Yeah.
And then I was like, what's everybody so upset about? And then Starscream gets disintegrated, and I'm like, the audience, everybody's laughing and cheering, and I'm like, but that was one of my first big influences. Black Cauldron, I loved that movie when I was a kid, and just the dark kind of undertones and how things moved in that movie was real creepy to me. And then when I got into, of course, Vampire Hunter D, I say that after all these years because that movie, the tone of that movie, like the way it introduces you with like a little prologue written on the screen. And then the opening scene, it's just like there is no hope. It was the first time, and I'm saying this as like in my early 20s when I watched it again, when I found out what it was. It was the first time watching an animation where from the start I felt hopeless. Like it made me feel like I was in a hopeless situation. Not like running for your life or anything, but just like, why be alive in this world? And then by the end of it, when Dee saves the day and he's riding off on his horse and the sun's shining and everything, you're like, hell yes. Like, we won, So that movie puts me in that feeling. So that's a big inspiration. And then, I'm going to have to say, like, a lot of the animated series that are out there, the X-Men animated series was a big influence for me. The Spawn animated series from HBO back in the day was a big influence for me. I've talked with you about what I think about that.
Yes.
And the shonen stuff that came out in like the mid 2000s had a big influence on me, like Full Metal Alchemist and things like that.
Yeah.
And then there was a show, it's the Space Western trilogy from 97, 98, Trigun, Cowboy Bebop, and Outlaw Star. I love those three. Those were a big impact on me because Outlaw Star is a master study in character design and how to make all these different types of alien and robotic and human forms move and work together on screen, and nothing feels like it's out of place. Do you know what I mean? Like the character designer on that show was just a master. And it was like watching all that really cool early mid-90s like space punk pop anime. Yeah. You know what I mean? None of it made any sense. It was all crazy and off the wall, but the animation all looked dope.
Yeah, it looks so cool. You were like, this is amazing. I don't understand any of it, but it's so cool.
What is this? I don't remember the titles of any of these, but these are great. Like if I see the dude with the David Bowie haircut and like a silver motorcycle, I'm like, man, I saw that back in the day.
Oh, man, for
Future
sure.
City something.
Yeah.
But those
anything
are
on Toonami.
Yeah, so a bunch of different influences, but a lot of Eastern influence in my my animation preferences and stuff.
Awesome. We kind of touched on this a little bit, but as an indie creator, what do you think are some of the biggest obstacles that you and just indie creators in general face in the industry right now?
A big one is exposure, getting your stuff seen. Not only that, but the nature of you have to work, and you can't work on your stuff as work. You know what I mean? Like a lot of these big industry people, they are in a fortunate position outside of indie people, because every now and then you'll get commission to work on something that's not yours, though. You know what I mean? Nobody's ever paying you to work on your stuff. So for me personally, when my money took a big hit, I stopped doing commissions. I'll do them every now and then, but I couldn't do commissions. I didn't want to work on other people's books. I wanted to work on my stuff, and the money, it bottomed out, and I had to go back to working full-time waiting tables, and that cut into my work time. So exposure and, money, that's really what it comes down to, because there are so many independent creators I can think of just in our state here in Kentucky, that there's a hotbed of talent here. There's hotbed of talent here. And people that think outside the box, they have new ideas and new concepts. And unfortunately, 75% of those will never be seen or heard because they have a kid or kids. They got a mortgage. They got to work, Yeah. And one of my goals in the next 5 years is to be able to be in a position with a certain thing to be able to help those people get their stories and voices heard. Yeah. So that's what we need more of right now. Yeah. People that come up from the independent ranks and make it. It would be nice if those people would give back a little bit. That would help those other people get to where they're at. And that, honestly, especially with comics and the state of comics right now, indie is booming. Indie comics are thriving right now. And people are thirsty for that kind of thing because, there's something for everybody. You know what I mean? There's capes, there's noir, there's sci-fi, there's all different kinds of stuff. And I think that needs more attention. And I think these new ideas from especially like people like us, and then there's other women out there who are trying to get their stuff out there, and all these different people just need a shot. Yeah. And that's really the hardest thing with being an indie creator, is finding that niche, that group, or that person that's going to give you that shot. Yeah. But if you can find it, then you have to put your nose to the grindstone and get it done. Like if somebody comes up to you and says, I'm going to give you $10,000 to publish this round of books and pay for a couple of tables, I'm going to invest in you. If you've got a full-time job, you have a decision to make. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's gray. It's a very gray area as far as what you feel like you can responsibly do and what is best for the future of your creativity. I have this conversation with my wife all the time. What is responsible for me to do right now, and what is responsible for me to do right now that will benefit us 10 years from now? Right. You know what I mean? So that's really why I started doing the animation and cutting back on working full-time, because I was like, look, I can work full-time and I can be in the ground in 10 years and not have a dime to leave my family, or I can cut back a little bit now, build something prosperous for the future, and have something maybe bigger in the future that'll be better for my family and loved ones. That's really what it comes down to as independent creator, your time, your resources, and your exposure.
Yeah.
And right now, that's a big problem for a lot of people because everybody, there's one steak in the yard, and there are 100 dogs just waiting to get out of the kennel and go after it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I've heard the term, that it's very oversaturated, and I don't know that that's the correct term to use. Really, I think going back to what you said earlier, just this is it's a unique time to be a creator because if you want to, you pretty much can. Even if you have no money, you can do a webcomic.
Yeah.
And you can do a webcomic and you don't even have to buy a domain. You don't even, you can get on Webtoons and just draw in your free time and post a page when you're done with it.
Yeah.
And so I would say it's the key to all of that. And that's, kind of piggybacking off of what you said, is finding your tribe, your group of people, your audience. And that's, and instead of trying to reach thousands of people, try and find your group. And that's tricky, man. That takes time. It takes putting yourself out there in different ways. And then once you start seeing those pieces come together, and I think, you and I, specifically have started seeing that, begin to form and take its, take place before us as we each are starting to grow our own little fan base, our own little tribes. And then at that point, when you get there, you start feeding into that. And then hopefully that group just grows.
Yeah.
Right. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I heard an interview or saw an interview with Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails. And it was basically about the state of music. And this was mid 2000s. So he was being interviewed about that. And he said, you wouldn't know it from my music, but I am a classically trained piano player. And he said, and I got that foundation, and I think that that's important, even though I completely moved away from that. And, there's no pianos in my music, things like that. But he said he created that great foundation. But, he was talking about the fact, same thing that you're talking about. Like, I can, on my phone, create music now. I've got GarageBand, and I can tap on things and make it sound like a guitar or a drum set or whatever, and you could make music and put it on SoundCloud for free. And he said there's more music, but I don't think that there's more better music or more good music. And I think that's the state of any sort of creative space now, is that there's so much more, and you just got to figure out how to be part of that better group,
right?
If you can.
That takes a level of patience too. That the thing you see. I do look at different comics and stuff online, especially webtoons, from time to time, just to kind of get a feel for what people are gravitating towards right now. And you'll either see something with a really great story with artwork that needs to be refined, or you'll see something with great artwork with a story that just kind of goes nowhere. But every now and then, you'll find something where the two meet, and it's really kind of going somewhere. When we live in an age, like I said, the double-edged sword earlier, you can put your stuff out there at any time. But before, when we would see people's stuff out there, it was refined and it was funneled through a company and all this other kind of stuff. Now we're not seeing that. That's why I said percentage-wise, I feel like there's just as much talent out there as there always was.
Yeah.
Now anybody can get their phone out, take a picture of the thing, and put it on Twitter or put it on, Instagram or whatever. People will always, if you continue to do your work and you continue to do your due diligence, work hard, and make sure you're putting the best product out there in some sort of periodic form. Like, you're not waiting 3 years of putting another picture out, or another song.
Yeah.
People will start to find you. Now, with what frequency that happens, I think depends on, the other thing we talked about, like how good are you at getting in front of the right people, like we were talking about.
Yeah.
You know? And Brian, earlier you said there's not really an oversaturation. I agree with that. I don't think it's an oversaturation issue. I think now, just as anybody can put their work out there, the creator can also has the power to find and fine-tune their search for who may like their work.
Yeah.
And it's your responsibility as an independent creator to find that. It's easy to get frustrated when you upload what you think is your best looking work ever and it gets 10 little heart clicks on Instagram. Yeah. It's easy to say, screw it, I'm done, this is terrible. Yeah. That doesn't mean you're terrible. That means the right people didn't see it.
Yeah.
That's all that means.
Yeah.
You know, so people need to be more patient with that stuff. Just a little more patience and a little more knowledge of where you need to put your stuff and get in front of.
Yeah, and that's just going back to, you know, what we said earlier is, you know, a big part of the indie game is sticking around.
Yeah,
you know, it's sticking around. It's continuing to go through, you know, what you see, what you feel is a failure. You know, it isn't. It's just, it's slow, and you just keep going, and eventually something will pick up. And you may not be around to see it happen. I mean, you look at guys like Edgar Allan Poe, Vincent Van Gogh. You know, those guys. Unfortunately, they didn't see their works be appreciated, really, but it was, and now they're like two of the biggest names in art history.
Yeah.
So, you know, and that's why it goes beyond just the looking for, you know, to be noticed. And then, you know, granted, that's a fine goal to have. It always feels good when you are noticed and, you know, you can make a living doing it. But if you do it for the love of it, you know, eventually somebody's going to appreciate it.
Yeah. And you have to quiet all the sensationalism too.
Yeah.
Like all the people, like you'll go on social media and you'll see like a stick figure that would go on like somebody's fridge or whatever, you know, at school.
Yeah. And
it's got 10,000 retweets or something. And you just want to like put your head in the desk and be like,
so annoying.
It's because the right people saw it. That's all that it is. Yeah. And different things speak to people in different ways. You know I've created what I thought were my best pieces at the time when I made them, and didn't get the traction I thought it would. And then I went like a few days not posting anything else. I just posted like a random sketch, and it gets 150 whatevers. You know, I mean, you just never know. You never know. But it's all about who sees your stuff, and it's a hustle. You got to stick with it. And like any job that any of us have ever worked, sometimes it's busy, sometimes it's slow.
Yep.
And it's no different, especially when people have no money. You know,
right? Yeah. Yeah, especially right now, like nobody has
during a pandemic.
Yeah,
we got this pandemic going on.
Comics or food.
Right.
Yeah. All right, Ray. You mentioned some of the inspirations that you have, but if you were able to go back and like reboot a series. And give it the Ray Coffman spin, what would be the series that you pick, and how would you change it, and why would you change it? Does that make sense?
No, yeah.
Okay.
I'm just trying to think, because that's something you really gotta dig your teeth into. I feel like so there was this, I think I had a different answer for this point, but I'm going to say Vampire Hunter D. I'm going to say that not because I feel like it needs any changing.
But it would be fun.
But it would be so fun to dig into those novels, because they're based on novels, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It would be so fun to dig into those novels and dig into those characters and portray them how they're portrayed in the novels. And instead of like an hour and a half to 2 hour movie, make it like a 13 to 16 episode, 1 hour episode season, you know, and just really explore everything about that world and what's going on. And I think that would be super cool. There's, I think that's it. There's a couple of old Japanese RPGs I would like to do that with, but they're really obscure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think the answer is Vampire Hunter D for sure. Okay. I think I would love to just sink my teeth into that.
Yeah.
And if I ever had an animation studio that was doing big ticket stuff, I would do season 2 of Outlaw Star, hands down, no questions asked.
Okay. Cool.
Cool, man. Well, Ray, thank you so much for your time, man.
It's been great.
It's been amazing.
Awesome.
And like I said, at the beginning of the show, you are more than welcome to come back anytime you want. Whenever you got, something new you want to pitch or plug, or if you just want to go on here and talk some nerd stuff, you're more than welcome to. Before we head out, buddy, tell everybody where they can find you, what you're up to.
Okay, so you can find me on youtube.com/Ray Coffman, RayCoffman. You can find me on Twitter @Coffman, COFFMAN 20XX. That's the same on Instagram.
Okay.
And RayCoffman.com, which I update once every quarter moon, maybe.
Once every fortnight.
Once a fortnight. I should put up a new painting. But yeah, those are the main places where you can hit me up right now. I've got a Twitch channel too, twitch.tv/Ray Coffman. Okay. I don't stream as much lately, but I'm probably going to start once this pilot gets done, streaming some stuff again. I'm going to do some art and some animation streams on there.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So just not just gaming and tooling around, but yeah, there'll be some other stuff on there too.
Sweet.
Cool, man. Well, it looks like you are well versed in the social medias.
Right.
Yeah, painstakingly so.
For sure. Well, again, thank you so much, Ray. It's been great having you. And everybody, thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you next time. So remember to stay nerdy, my friends.
That's right. See ya.
See you later, guys.